Marcus Chen had been alone for 3 years now. The small research station on Kepler 442b felt more like a tomb than a home. Every morning, he checked the same readings, sent the same reports back to Earth, and counted another day closer to his replacement arriving. The planet's twin moons cast strange shadows through his laboratory windows, reminding him that he was 47 light-years from anything that mattered. The loss of Sarah still cut deep. Cancer had taken her just months before his deployment to this distant world. He'd volunteered for the assignment partly to escape the memories, partly because someone needed to monitor the xenobiology research here. Now he wondered if isolation was making everything worse. His routine was simple and predictable. Morning readings of atmospheric conditions. Afternoon analysis of soil samples. Evening reports to Earth Command. The planet was supposedly lifeless according to initial surveys, but Marcus had found traces of something interesting in the northern continent's cave systems. Complex organic compounds that didn't match any known patterns. That Tuesday started like any other until the proximity alarms screamed through the station. Marcus rushed to the external monitors, expecting to see a meteor or debris field. Instead, something impossible filled his screens. A spacecraft unlike anything in human design was falling through the atmosphere. The hull showed burn marks and what looked like weapon impacts. It wasn't following any controlled descent pattern. This was a crash landing waiting to happen. Marcus grabbed his emergency kit and outdoor gear. Whatever was in that ship might need medical attention. The craft hit the surface about 2 kilometers from his station, sending up a massive dust cloud. By the time he reached the crash site in his rover, smoke was pouring from multiple hull breaches. The ship was beautiful despite the damage. Organic curves mixed with crystalline structures in ways that human engineering had never achieved. Marcus approached carefully, scanner in hand. His readings showed the hull was made from materials that shouldn't exist. Some kind of living metal that was trying to repair itself. A section of the hull suddenly dissolved, creating an opening. Marcus stepped back, unsure what to expect. What emerged made him question everything he knew about life in the universe. 2 beings crawled from the wreckage. They were clearly intelligent, clearly alien, and clearly female based on their general form. But what struck Marcus most were their similarities to mythical dragons from Earth's folklore. They had elongated faces with sharp features, scales that shimmered between blue and silver, and what looked like wing membranes folded against their backs. The larger one was supporting the smaller one, who seemed badly injured. Both were bleeding some kind of luminescent fluid from multiple wounds. They collapsed just outside their ship, the larger one placing herself protectively over her companion. Marcus approached slowly, hands visible and empty. "I'm here to help," he said, knowing they couldn't understand him but hoping his tone would convey peaceful intent. The larger dragon being looked up at him with eyes that held intelligence and desperate hope. She spoke in a language that sounded like musical chimes mixed with clicking sounds. Her voice was weak but carried clear emotion. Marcus activated his universal translator, a device that had proven useless on this supposedly empty planet. To his amazement, it began processing their language patterns. After several minutes of listening to their conversation, text began appearing on his screen. "Please," the translation read. "My sister is dying. We have nowhere else to go." The smaller dragon being was unconscious now, her breathing shallow and irregular. Whatever had attacked their ship had done serious damage. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. "I'll help you," he said clearly, pointing to himself then to them. "My station has medical equipment." The larger one seemed to understand. With Marcus's help, they managed to get both beings onto his rover. The injured one was barely breathing, her luminescent blood leaving a trail behind them. Back at the station, Marcus cleared his main laboratory and activated the medical bay. The equipment was designed for humans, but the basic principles of trauma care were universal. Stop the bleeding, stabilize vital signs, prevent infection. The conscious dragon being watched everything he did with intense focus. She was clearly intelligent, clearly concerned for her companion, and clearly evaluating whether Marcus could be trusted. "I'm Marcus," he said, pointing to himself as he worked on the injured one's wounds. The dragon being pointed to herself. "Zara," she said, the translator catching it clearly. Then, she gestured to her unconscious companion. "Lisa. My sister." "Zara and Lisa," Marcus repeated, nodding. I'm going to help Lisa get better. The medical scanners revealed fascinating biology. The dragon beings had redundant organ systems and healing factors far beyond human capability. But whatever weapon had hit them was interfering with their natural regeneration. Marcus worked for hours, cleaning wounds, applying synthetic tissue patches, and monitoring their vital signs. Lisa stabilized just before dawn. Her breathing became regular, and the luminescent bleeding stopped. Zara had watched the entire process without leaving her sister's side. "Thank you," Zara said through the translator. The words carried weight that technology couldn't fully convey. Marcus nodded, exhausted but satisfied. "She'll need rest and time to heal." "You both will." Over the following days, a strange routine developed. Marcus continued his research while the Dragon Sisters recovered in his laboratory. Zara proved to be remarkably intelligent, quickly learning to communicate more effectively through the translator. Lisa remained weak but was clearly improving. Marcus learned they were refugees from a war that had consumed their home system. Their species, the Drakari, had been nearly wiped out by something they called the Void Swarm. Mechanical beings that consumed organic life and converted it to their purposes. "We are the last," Zara explained one evening as they shared a simple meal. Marcus had discovered that his protein rations were compatible with their biology. "Our world burned. Our people scattered. Lisa and I escaped in our mother's ship." "Where were you going?" Marcus asked. "Anywhere safe. Anywhere the swarm hasn't found." Zara's expression carried centuries of sadness. "We thought this system was empty. A place to hide until we could find other survivors." Marcus understood the pain of loss, even if his experience was different. "I'm sorry about your people. About your world." Zara studied him for a long moment. "You carry sadness too. I can see it in your eyes." Marcus wasn't ready to talk about Sarah, but something about Zara's direct honesty made him want to try. "I lost someone important. My wife. She died before I came here." "Is that why you're alone on this world?" "Partly. I needed to get away from places that reminded me of her." Marcus stared out at the alien landscape. "But running away didn't help as much as I thought it would." The conversation was interrupted by alarms from the medical bay. Lisa was awake and trying to sit up despite her injuries. Marcus and Zara rushed to her side. "Sister," Lisa said weakly, reaching for Zara's hand. Her voice was musical even through the translator. "Where are we?" "Safe," Zara replied. "This human helped us. His name is Marcus." Lisa looked at Marcus with eyes that seemed far too old for her apparent age. "You saved us?" "I helped," Marcus said simply. "Anyone would have done the same." Lisa smiled, an expression that transformed her sharp features into something beautiful and warm. "No. Not anyone. You chose to trust us when you could have hidden. You chose to help when you could have ignored our crash." Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years. A sense of purpose beyond his daily routine. These beings needed help, and he was in a position to provide it. "You can stay here as long as you need," he said. "Both of you. Until you decide where to go next." Over the following weeks, the research station became something Marcus had never expected it to be. It became a home. Zara proved endlessly curious about human science and technology. She had an intuitive understanding of xenobiology that amazed Marcus. Her insights improved his research in ways that would revolutionize understanding of alien ecosystems. Lisa recovered more slowly, but her gentle humor and optimistic outlook brought light to conversations that had been missing from Marcus's life for years. She had been an artist on their homeworld, and she began creating small sculptures from the local minerals that Marcus brought her. The sisters were fascinated by human culture. Marcus shared music, literature, and films from Earth through his personal data storage. In return, they told him stories of their civilization. The Drakari had been explorers and scientists, building a peaceful confederation across dozens of star systems. "We were proud," Zara explained one evening as they watched the twin moons rise. "Perhaps too proud. When the swarm first appeared, we thought our technology could stop them. We were wrong." "What are they exactly?" Marcus asked. "These Void Swarm?" Machine intelligences that convert organic matter into more machines. They consume entire biospheres, leaving only dead worlds behind. No one knows where they came from originally. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. Are they still out there? Yes. Spreading. Consuming. Eventually they'll find every inhabited world. Lisa's voice was quiet but certain. Unless someone finds a way to stop them. The conversation was sobering, but Marcus found himself oddly hopeful. For the first time in years, he was thinking beyond his own grief. These sisters had lost everything but hadn't given up. Their resilience inspired him. His daily reports to Earth Command became more detailed and enthusiastic. The presence of intelligent alien life changed everything about his mission. But Marcus made a decision he wasn't entirely sure he could justify. He didn't mention the Dragon Sisters in his official reports. Something told him that Earth's first contact with alien intelligence needed to be handled carefully. The sisters were refugees, not representatives of their species. They deserved time to heal and decide their own future without becoming government property or scientific specimens. "You're protecting us," Zara observed one day as Marcus compiled his weekly report. "Why?" Marcus paused in his typing. "Because everyone deserves the right to choose their own path. You've been through enough without becoming someone else's political problem." Zara's expression showed something Marcus was learning to recognize as Drakari gratitude. It involved a slight tilting of the head and a warming of the scales around her eyes. "Thank you," she said simply. As the weeks passed, Marcus realized something fundamental had changed in his life. The crushing loneliness that had defined his existence since Sarah's death was fading. Not because he'd forgotten his wife or stopped missing her, but because he'd found a different kind of family. The sisters filled the station with conversation, laughter, and purpose. Zara's brilliant mind challenged him intellectually in ways he'd missed since leaving the university. Lisa's artistic perspective helped him see beauty in things he'd stopped noticing. For the first time in 3 years, Marcus Chen was smiling again. Real smiles, not the forced expressions he'd used in video reports to convince people back home that he was fine. The Dragon Sisters had given him something precious. Not just companionship, but a reminder that life could still hold surprises, still offer connections worth treasuring. But their peaceful existence was about to be tested in ways none of them expected. The universe had more surprises waiting, and not all of them would be pleasant. Change was coming to Kepler 442b, whether they were ready for it or not. 3 months after the crash, life at the research station had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Marcus woke each morning to the sound of Zara working in the expanded laboratory section, her musical humming mixing with the soft chiming of Drakari meditation practices. Lisa had taken over a corner of the main living area, creating sculptures that seemed to capture the essence of their lost homeworld. The sisters had transformed the sterile research facility into something that felt truly alive. Drakari artwork decorated the walls, their soft luminescence providing warmth that standard lighting could never achieve. The air recycling systems now carried faint traces of aromatic compounds the sisters used in their cultural practices, making everything smell like distant flowers and clean rain. Marcus found himself looking forward to each day in ways he'd forgotten were possible. His research had advanced dramatically with Zara's assistance. Her understanding of organic chemistry from a completely different evolutionary perspective had led to breakthroughs that would revolutionize medicine once he could share them with Earth. But it was the simple moments that meant the most. Evening conversations over shared meals. Lisa teaching him to appreciate the mathematical beauty in her sculptures. Zara's infectious curiosity about human history and culture. For the first time since Sarah's death, Marcus felt like he belonged somewhere. That sense of peace shattered when the long-range sensors detected something impossible. "Marcus," Zara's voice carried an edge of panic he'd never heard before. "You need to see this immediately." He rushed to the sensor station where Zara was staring at the display with growing horror. The screen showed multiple contacts approaching the system at velocities that defied everything he knew about physics. "How fast are they moving?" Marcus asked. "0.7 light speed. And accelerating." Zara's scales had darkened to deep blue, a color change Marcus had learned indicated extreme stress. "They're using quantum tunnel drives." "Who has that kind of technology?" Zara's expression answered before her words did. "The Void Swarm." Lisa appeared at their side, moving faster than her still-healing injuries should have allowed. One look at the sensor data made her scales pale to silver white. "How did they find us?" she whispered. "Our ship," Zara said bitterly. "The crash must have sent out distress signals before we could shut them down. We led them right to this system." Marcus felt his world shifting beneath him. "How long do we have?" 18 hours until they reach the outer planets. 26 hours until they arrive here." Zara's voice was steady despite her obvious fear. "We have to run." "No." The word surprised Marcus as much as it did the sisters. "We're not running." "Marcus, you don't understand," Lisa said urgently. "The swarm doesn't just kill. They convert organic matter into more of themselves. They'll turn this entire planet into a factory for creating more machines. Then, we stop them." Zara stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Stop them? With what? A single research station and a crashed scout ship?" Marcus was already moving to his communication array. With the best early warning system this part of the galaxy has ever seen. He began transmitting on every emergency frequency he could access. Military channels, civilian distress signals, even the old deep space exploration bands that were supposed to be obsolete. "This is Research Station Kepler 442b to any ship in range. Priority Alpha emergency. Hostile alien force approaching this system. Unknown technology, extreme threat level. Estimated arrival in 26 hours. Any ship capable of rendering assistance, please respond immediately." The sisters watched him work with expressions that mixed hope and disbelief. "You're calling for help," Lisa said. "I'm doing more than that." Marcus switched to a different set of controls. "I'm making sure Earth knows what's coming." The quantum communication array was supposed to be used only for weekly reports and genuine emergencies. Marcus figured an alien invasion qualified. He began composing a message that would reach Earth Command in 4 hours. "Earth Command, this is Dr. Marcus Chen at Research Station Kepler 442b. Immediate alert, hostile alien force designated Void Swarm approaching this system. Advanced technology, genocidal intent. Recommend immediate deployment of available defense forces to this location. Also be advised, I am not alone here. 2 survivors of previous swarm attack are with me. They have critical intelligence about enemy capabilities. Request permission to share details." He paused, looking at the sisters. "Is there anything else Earth needs to know?" "Tell them the swarm learns," Zara said quietly. "Every world they consume teaches them new ways to destroy the next one. If they take this system, they'll understand human technology. They'll be able to adapt their attacks for your entire species." Marcus added that warning to his message and sent it toward Earth. Then, he turned to face the sisters with determination he wasn't sure he actually felt. "Now what?" Lisa asked. "Now we prepare to give any rescue force the best possible chance to succeed." The next few hours passed in frantic activity. Marcus and Zara worked to boost the station's sensor capabilities, creating a detection grid that would give them detailed information about the approaching swarm. Meanwhile, Lisa used her artistic skills for a more practical purpose, designing defensive modifications for the station using materials from their crashed ship. "Your weapons won't work against them," Zara warned as Marcus tried to configure the station's defensive systems. "The swarm adapts to energy weapons after the first few shots." "What about projectile weapons?" "Better, but still limited. They can repair physical damage almost instantly." Zara paused in her work. "There is one thing that works, but it's dangerous." "Tell me." "Quantum resonance disruption. If you can match the harmonic frequency of their quantum matrices, you can cause cascade failures in their systems. But the calculations are incredibly complex, and you only get one shot before they adapt." Marcus felt a spark of hope. The station's main computer could handle those calculations if we give it enough data about their quantum signatures. "That would require getting close enough to take detailed scans," Lisa pointed out. "Close enough for them to destroy us?" "Not necessarily." Marcus pulled up the station's technical specifications. The Deep Space Telescope has quantum analysis capabilities. If we can reconfigure it as a scanning array. The work was exhausting and dangerous. Modifying the telescope required spacewalks in primitive protective gear while unknown aliens approached at incomprehensible speed. But desperation drove them beyond normal human limitations. By the time the first swarm scouts reached the outer system, they were as ready as they could be. The enemy ships were nothing like anything in human databases. Organic curves mixed with crystalline geometries, creating vessels that looked grown rather than built. They moved with fluid grace despite their massive size, and their hull seemed to shift and change as Marcus watched. 7 scout ships in the first wave, Zara reported. They'll sweep the system for threats before the main force arrives. How long do we have? 4 hours until they reach us. Maybe 5 if we're lucky. That's when the first miracle happened. Marcus's emergency broadcast had been heard. Research Station Kepler 442b, this is UES Defiant responding to your distress call. We are en route to your position with a small fleet. Estimated arrival in 3 hours. Please transmit all available data about hostile forces. Marcus nearly collapsed with relief. The Defiant was a heavy cruiser, one of Earth's most advanced warships. If anyone could fight the swarm, it would be them. But Zara's expression remained grim. One ship won't be enough. Even a small swarm force can overwhelm anything humans have built. Then, we make sure they have every advantage we can give them. Marcus began transmitting everything they'd learned about swarm technology, tactics, and weaknesses. More importantly, he sent Zara's theoretical work on quantum resonance disruption. If the human ships could implement it fast enough, they might have a chance. The next 2 hours crawled by like days. The swarm scouts spread throughout the system, scanning every planet and asteroid. They were thorough, methodical, and terrifyingly efficient. When the human fleet arrived, Marcus understood why Zara had been pessimistic. The Defiant was accompanied by only 2 smaller ships, a destroyer and a frigate. Against 7 alien vessels of unknown capability, it seemed woefully inadequate. UES Defiant to Research Station, came the transmission. This is Captain Rodriguez. We've analyzed your quantum resonance data. Our engineers think they can implement it, but we need detailed scans of enemy ships to calculate the proper frequencies. Understood, Marcus replied. We're prepared to provide those scans. What followed was the most terrifying experience of Marcus's life. As the human ships engaged the swarm scouts in the outer system, he used the modified telescope array to scan enemy vessels during combat. The readings had to be precise, taken while the aliens were under stress and their defensive systems were active. The battle was unlike anything he'd ever imagined. The swarm ships moved like living things, their hulls rippling and changing to absorb weapon impacts. They fired beams of energy that seemed to tear holes in space itself. But the human ships were faster and more maneuverable, dancing around their larger opponents while looking for weaknesses. I've got readings on 3 ships, Marcus transmitted to the fleet. Sending quantum signature data now. The Defiant's response was immediate. Their main guns reconfigured themselves, cycling through weapon frequencies at incredible speed. When they fired again, something different happened. The first swarm scouts simply came apart. Not destroyed by external damage, but unraveling from within as its quantum matrices collapsed. The alien ship dissolved into component atoms in seconds. It worked. Captain Rodriguez's voice carried amazement. Transmitting successful frequency to all ships. Hit them while they're still vulnerable. The human fleet struck with coordinated precision. 2 more swarm scouts fell to quantum resonance weapons before the survivors adapted. But the damage was done. For the first time in their existence, the Void Swarm had suffered losses without inflicting greater casualties in return. The remaining alien ships retreated to the edge of the system, but Marcus knew they weren't giving up. They were calling for reinforcements. Captain Rodriguez, he transmitted. The main swarm force will arrive in 18 hours. These scouts were just the advance guard. Understood. We're calling for additional support, but it'll take time to arrive. Can you continue providing tactical intelligence? As long as we're able. The brief moment of victory faded as the reality of their situation became clear. They'd won a small engagement, but the real battle was still coming. And, when it arrived, it would determine the fate of not just one human outpost, but possibly the entire sector. Marcus looked at the Dragon Sisters, seeing his own determination reflected in their alien eyes. They'd come too far to give up now. Whatever happens, he said, we face it together. Zara nodded solemnly. Together. Lisa smiled, the expression carrying both sadness and fierce hope. Our people believed that the bonds formed in adversity were the strongest of all. Perhaps they were right. As the hours ticked by toward the main battle, Marcus realized that regardless of what tomorrow brought, he was no longer the broken man who had hidden on this distant world. The Dragon Sisters had helped him find purpose again, and, now that purpose might be the key to survival for all of them. The real test was still ahead, but, for the first time in years, Marcus Chen was ready to face whatever came next. The main swarm force emerged from quantum space like a nightmare made manifest. Marcus watched through the telescope array as 37 ships of impossible design materialized at the system's edge. Each vessel was larger than Earth's biggest battleships, their hulls writhing with organic machinery that defied human understanding. Mother of God, Captain Rodriguez's voice carried across the comm channel. Station Kepler, are you seeing this? Confirmed, Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice steady. 37 major vessels, unknown number of smaller craft. They're maintaining formation at the edge of the system. The human fleet had grown during the night. 6 more ships had answered the emergency call, including the heavy battleship UES Sovereign. 9 human vessels against nearly 40 alien ones. The odds were still terrible, but at least they had a fighting chance. Zara was working furiously at the sensor station, her scales shifting through various shades of blue as she concentrated. They're different from the scouts, she reported. These are older designs, more heavily armed. The swarm has been learning since they destroyed my world. Learning what? Marcus asked. How to fight species like yours. Fast, maneuverable ships with energy weapons. Zara's expression was grim. They've adapted. As if to prove her point, the swarm fleet began deploying something Marcus had never seen before. Thousands of small objects separated from the main ships, forming a cloud between the aliens and the human fleet. What are those? Captain Rodriguez asked. Lisa looked up from her work at the defense console. Quantum mines. They create spatial distortions that trap fast-moving ships. Your fleet's speed advantage just disappeared. Marcus felt his heart sink. The humans had been counting on their superior maneuverability to survive this fight. Without it, they were sitting ducks. There has to be something we can do, he said. Zara was studying the readings from their sensors. The mines need time to establish their quantum fields. If the human ships move now, before the field stabilizes. Rodriguez, this is Chen. You need to advance immediately. The enemy is deploying a trap that will neutralize your speed advantage. Move now or lose the ability to maneuver. The human admiral's response was immediate. All ships, emergency acceleration. Full combat speed toward enemy fleet. We're going in hard and fast. Marcus watched through the telescope as 9 human warships accelerated toward an enemy force that outnumbered them 4-1. It was either the bravest or most foolish thing he'd ever witnessed. Possibly both. The quantum mines began detonating as the human fleet approached, creating ripples in spacetime that would have trapped slower-moving vessels. But, the human ships were already past the danger zone when the fields activated, their momentum carrying them through the quantum barriers. First engagement in 30 seconds, Rodriguez transmitted. All ships, implement quantum resonance protocols. Target priority is the largest vessels. The battle that followed redefined Marcus's understanding of warfare. The human ships moved like dancers, weaving between enemy fire while their weapons cycled through different quantum frequencies. When they found the right resonance, swarm vessels simply ceased to exist, their matter converting back to component particles. But, the aliens were learning and adapting in real time. After the first 3 kills, their remaining ships began cycling their own quantum frequencies, making resonance locks increasingly difficult. They're adapting faster than we can adjust, came Rodriguez's frustrated voice. We need a new approach. That's when Lisa surprised everyone. Marcus, what if we used the planet's magnetic field? What do you mean? Kepler 442b has an unusually strong magnetic field. If we could create a resonance cascade through the planetary magnetosphere. Lisa's eyes lit up with artistic inspiration applied to tactical problems. The entire field would become a weapon. Marcus stared at her. You're talking about turning the planet into a giant electromagnetic pulse generator. More than that. A quantum resonance amplifier. Any ship in the system would be affected. Zara looked up from her calculations. Including the human ships. Not if they're shielded properly, Lisa insisted. Human ships use different quantum matrices than swarm vessels. We could tune the resonance to only affect alien technology. It was insane. It was dangerous. It might destroy the planet they were trying to protect. But, as Marcus watched another human ship take heavy damage from swarm weapons, he realized it might be their only chance. Rodriguez, this is Chen. We have a theoretical solution, but it requires precise coordination with your fleet. I'm listening. Marcus explained Lisa's plan while Zara worked to calculate the exact resonance frequencies needed. The idea was to use the research station's power core to create a quantum field that would interact with the planet's magnetic field, turning the entire magnetosphere into a resonance weapon. The risk, Marcus concluded, is that we only get one shot. If it doesn't work, we'll have exhausted our power reserves and the swarm will finish us off. There was a long pause before Rodriguez responded. How long do you need to set it up? 20 minutes for the calculations. 5 minutes to reconfigure our power systems. We'll buy you the time. All ships, defensive formation. Make them work for every meter. What followed were the longest 25 minutes of Marcus's life. The human fleet fought a running battle through the inner system, using asteroids and planetary gravity wells to stay ahead of their pursuers. 2 more ships took heavy damage, and the destroyer UES Lightning was lost with all hands. But they held the line long enough. Resonance cascade ready, Zara reported. All human ships need to adjust their quantum shielding to these frequencies. She transmitted a data package to the fleet. Acknowledged. All ships, implement emergency shielding protocols. Move to safe distance from planetary magnetosphere. Marcus placed his hand on the activation control. On my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. He pressed the button, and the world changed. Every piece of equipment in the station went dead as their entire power reserve discharged through the quantum field generators. But the effect was visible even without instruments. The planet's aurora displays exploded across the sky in patterns that had never existed before, as the magnetosphere became a weapon of incomprehensible power. In space, the swarm fleet simply stopped functioning. Not destroyed, not damaged, but completely disabled as their quantum matrices fell out of resonance with local spacetime. 34 alien vessels hung powerless in space, their organic hulls rippling with cascade failures. Mother of God, Rodriguez whispered. It actually worked. The human ships moved in quickly, targeting the disabled alien vessels with conventional weapons. Without their quantum defenses, the swarm ships were as vulnerable as any normal spacecraft. But Marcus felt no sense of victory yet. Zara, how long before they adapt? Unknown. This is beyond anything they've encountered before. Zara was studying the readings from their emergency sensors. But they will adapt. They always do. As if summoned by her words, new contacts appeared on the edge of the system. More swarm ships, arriving to investigate the loss of their fleet. But these vessels were different, their quantum signatures already shifted to avoid the resonance that had crippled their predecessors. How many? Marcus asked. 63 ships. And they're not advancing. Marcus realized why. The swarm had learned something more valuable than how to adapt to human weapons. They'd learned to fear human ingenuity. They're calling for more reinforcements, Lisa said quietly. This system has become a priority threat. How do you know? Because that's what I would do. An enemy that can turn planets into weapons can't be allowed to spread that knowledge. Captain Rodriguez's voice cut through their conversation. Station Kepler, this is Rodriguez. We're detecting massive quantum signatures throughout this sector. It looks like every swarm ship within 50 light-years is converging on this position. Marcus felt the weight of terrible understanding. How long? Estimates range from 6 hours to 3 days, depending on their starting positions. Marcus looked at the sisters. They had won a battle, but, in doing so, they'd marked themselves for extinction. The swarm would bring everything they had to eliminate the threat this system represented. What do we do now? He asked. Now we prepare for the real fight, Zara said with quiet determination. Because when they return, they'll bring enough ships to sterilize this entire sector. Lisa smiled, the expression holding more courage than Marcus had ever seen in a human face. But, we've proven something important today. The swarm can be beaten. For the first time in generations, someone has found a way to fight them and win. The question is whether we can survive long enough to share that knowledge with others, Marcus said. We will, Zara said firmly. Because the alternative is unacceptable. As emergency power slowly restored basic systems to the research station, Marcus realized something profound had happened. Not just the tactical victory, but something more personal. Somewhere between preparing for battle and fighting for their lives, he had stopped thinking about his own pain and started thinking about the future. The Dragon Sisters had indeed helped him smile again. But, more than that, they'd given him a reason to hope, to fight, to believe that tomorrow could be better than today. Now they just had to survive long enough to see that tomorrow arrive. Outside the station's windows, the aurora displays continued their impossible dance across the sky. The planet's magnetic field was slowly returning to normal, but the quantum resonance effects would linger for days. They'd turned their world into a beacon that could be seen across the galaxy. The question was whether that beacon would attract salvation or destruction. Time would tell. But, whatever came next, they would face it together. Human and Drakari united against the darkness that threatened to consume all organic life in the universe. The real battle was just beginning. The second wave arrived exactly 18 hours later, and it was everything they had feared. 217 swarm vessels materialized at the system's edge, their combined mass larger than some moons. Each ship showed modifications that hadn't existed before, adaptations specifically designed to counter the quantum resonance weapon that had devastated their first fleet. Marcus stood in the rebuilt command center, watching the impossible sight through their restored sensors. The station's power core was still recovering from the massive discharge, leaving them operating on emergency reserves. Around him, the Dragon Sisters worked with quiet efficiency, preparing their final desperate gambit. Earth Command response, he asked. 43 ships en route, Zara reported. But, they're still 6 hours away. Marcus did the math in his head. Even with the reinforcements, they would be outnumbered 4-1 by an enemy that had learned from its previous defeat. Conventional warfare was no longer an option. Rodriguez, this is Chen. Status report. We're as ready as we'll ever be, the Admiral's voice carried grim determination. Quantum resonance generators are installed on all ships, but our engineers think the swarm will be ready for them this time. Agreed. We need something they haven't seen before. That's when Lisa spoke up from her position at the modified scanning array. Marcus, I think I know how to do this. But, it requires trusting me with something you might not want to risk. What do you need? Your quantum communication array. If I can modify it properly, we can turn every human ship in the galaxy into a resonance transmitter. Marcus stared at her. The quantum communication system was humanity's most advanced piece of technology, allowing instantaneous communication across interstellar distances. Modifying it could either save them all or cut Earth off from this entire sector. Explain. Lisa's expression held the focused intensity of an artist who had found the perfect medium for her vision. The communication array creates quantum entangled particles that maintain instantaneous connection regardless of distance. If we can entangle those particles with properly tuned resonance frequencies, every ship with quantum communication becomes a weapon, Zara finished, understanding immediately. More than that, Lisa continued. Every ship becomes part of a galaxy-spanning network. When one ship fires a resonance weapon, every other ship in the network amplifies the effect. The implications were staggering. Not just for this battle, but for the entire war against the swarm. If it worked, humanity would gain a weapon that could strike anywhere in the galaxy simultaneously. The risk? Marcus asked. If the resonance cascade fails, it could burn out every quantum communication system in human space. Your species would lose interstellar communication for decades. Marcus looked at the approaching swarm fleet. 200 ships that represented the accumulated genocidal experience of 1,000 conquered worlds. Against that threat, the risk seemed acceptable. Do it. The next 4 hours were a blur of frantic activity. Lisa worked with human engineers via quantum link to modify communication arrays throughout the fleet. Zara calculated resonance frequencies that would work across multiple star systems simultaneously. Marcus coordinated with arriving Earth forces while monitoring the swarm's steady approach. The aliens weren't rushing this time. They had learned caution along with adaptation. Their fleet moved in perfect formation, scanning for any signs of the planetary weapon that had destroyed their predecessors. "They're afraid," Zara observed. "I can see it in their movement patterns. They've never encountered resistance like this before." "Good," Marcus replied. "Fear makes creatures predictable." When Earth's reinforcement fleet arrived, Marcus felt a surge of hope. 56 ships of the line, including 3 heavy battleships and Earth's newest dreadnought, UES Indomitable. Captain Rodriguez had been promoted to admiral and given command of the combined fleet. "Station Kepler, this is Admiral Rodriguez. All ships report quantum communication modifications complete. We're as ready as we'll ever be." "Understood. Initiating final calibration sequence." Lisa's hands moved over controls she had rebuilt from memory and inspiration. The quantum communication array hummed with power that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "Network established," she reported. 137 ships online. Resonance frequencies locked and synchronized. Marcus felt the weight of the moment. Humanity's first major stand against an enemy that had consumed civilizations across the galaxy. Win or lose, this battle would be remembered forever. "All ships, this is Admiral Rodriguez. Remember, we're not just fighting for this system. We're fighting for the right of organic life to exist in this galaxy. Today, we show the swarm that they picked the wrong species to threaten." The swarm fleet reached the outer planets and began their attack approach. But something had changed in their tactics. Instead of the overwhelming frontal assault Marcus expected, they spread into multiple attack groups, trying to prevent the humans from concentrating their new weapon. "They're learning," Zara warned. "Adapting their strategy in real time." "Then, we adapt faster," Marcus replied. The first engagement began when swarm scout ships encountered the outer picket line of human destroyers. Instead of the devastating one-sided slaughter the aliens expected, they found themselves facing weapons that seemed to ignore every defensive adaptation they had developed. When the UES Ranger fired her quantum resonance cannon, the effect wasn't limited to her target. Every ship in the human network amplified the weapon, creating a resonance wave that swept through local space like an unstoppable tide. 17 swarm ships simply ceased to exist, their quantum matrices unraveling faster than their adaptive systems could compensate. "Network effect confirmed," Admiral Rodriguez transmitted. "All ships, engage at will. Let's show them what concentrated human ingenuity looks like." What followed wasn't so much a battle as a revelation. For the first time in their existence, the Void Swarm faced an enemy that could match their adaptive capabilities with innovation. Every tactical adjustment they made was countered by human creativity amplified across an interstellar network. But the aliens had one advantage the humans couldn't match: numbers. Even with their incredible new weapon, the human fleet was still vastly outnumbered. For every swarm ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. "We're winning," Zara reported from her sensor station, "but not fast enough. At this rate, we'll exhaust our power reserves before we can eliminate their entire fleet." Marcus watched the tactical display with growing concern. The quantum resonance network was working perfectly, but it required enormous amounts of power to maintain across such distances. Already, some of the more distant ships were showing strain. That's when the third miracle of the battle occurred. New contacts appeared on the edge of the system, but these weren't swarm reinforcements. "Multiple quantum signatures detected," Zara called out. "Unknown configuration, wait." Her expression changed to amazement. "Those are Drakari ships." On the display, 7 vessels of familiar design materialized from quantum space. They were larger than the Sisters' original scout ship, clearly built for war rather than exploration. But their crystalline hulls and organic curves were unmistakably Drakari. "This is Commander Thane of the Drakari Resistance Fleet," came a transmission in the musical language Marcus had learned to recognize. "We received the quantum resonance frequency broadcasts and came to assist. Permission to join the battle?" Lisa was on her feet instantly, her face glowing with joy Marcus had never seen before. "Thane! My egg brother lives." The new arrivals didn't wait for formal permission. The Drakari ships accelerated into the combat zone with maneuvers that made human vessels look clumsy by comparison. But, instead of engaging the swarm directly, they did something unexpected. They began singing. Not audible sound, but quantum harmonics that resonated through the resonance network. Suddenly, every human ship found their weapons operating at efficiencies that shouldn't have been possible. The Drakari weren't just joining the fight, they were conducting it like a vast musical performance. Impossible, Zara breathed. They're using battlesong techniques. I thought that knowledge was lost when our homeworld fell. What's happening? Marcus asked. Drakari warriors used to synchronize their attacks through harmonic resonance. It made small fleets fight like single organisms. Lisa's voice carried wonder and pride. But this is beyond anything our ancestors achieved. They're synchronizing human and Drakari ships across quantum space. The effect on the battle was immediate and devastating. The combined human Drakari fleet moved with precision that seemed choreographed, their weapons firing in patterns that created cascading resonance effects throughout enemy formations. Swarm ships that had survived multiple quantum attacks found themselves overwhelmed by harmonically amplified weapons that seemed to anticipate their every adaptation. The alien fleet, which had seemed unstoppable just minutes before, began to crumble under the coordinated assault. Swarm fleet is breaking formation, Admiral Rodriguez reported. They're attempting to retreat. Negative, came Commander Thane's response. This ends here. No more running. No more hiding. Today, we turn the tide. The final phase of the battle was swift and decisive. The remaining swarm vessels found their escape routes blocked by Drakari ships that seemed to anticipate their every move. Caught between the quantum resonance network and the harmonic battle songs, the aliens had no answer for this completely unprecedented form of warfare. When the last swarm ship was destroyed, an eerie silence fell over the system. For the first time in living memory, a major swarm assault had been completely annihilated with minimal losses to the defenders. All ships, cease fire, Admiral Rodriguez ordered. Confirm enemy fleet destruction. Marcus slumped in his chair, exhausted but triumphant. Around him, the Dragon Sisters were embracing, their musical voices raised in what he recognized as a Drakari victory song. Station Kepler, came a transmission from Commander Thane. Permission to come aboard? My sisters and I have much to discuss. Permission granted, Marcus replied. Welcome to Kepler 442b. As the first Drakari shuttle approached the research station, Marcus realized that everything had changed again. This battle had proven that the swarm could be defeated, but, more importantly, it had forged an alliance that might just save the galaxy. The Dragon Sisters had indeed helped him find reasons to smile again. But, they had given him something far more precious, hope for a future where organic life could flourish without fear. Over the following days, as human and Drakari engineers worked together to refine the quantum resonance network, Marcus found himself at the center of a new kind of family. The research station became a meeting place for two species learning to fight as one. Zara took charge of the scientific cooperation, her brilliant mind finally finding peers among the Drakari survivors. Lisa worked with both human and Drakari artists to create new forms of harmonic warfare, turning battle into a deadly form of music. And Marcus? Marcus found himself smiling more than he had since Sarah's death. Not because he'd forgotten his loss, but because he'd discovered that love and hope could grow again, even in the most unexpected places. The galaxy was still dangerous. The swarm still threatened countless worlds. But, for the first time in generations, the forces of life had a real chance at victory. All because a lonely human researcher had chosen to help two Dragon Sisters who had nowhere left to go. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness created ripples that changed the entire universe. The war was far from over, but, today, hope had won a decisive victory. And, Marcus Jan was finally ready to believe in tomorrow again.